I'm Rachel Gallegos. I am the school board vice president. I'll be stepping in for Mr. Barrett tonight. Um, as most of you know, these meetings are recorded. You can see them on our website to watch back later or to watch live now if you're at home. And with that, we will move on to section 2, our student representatives.
All right. You may have to push the button. Yep.
It's great to see everyone again. I hope you've all had a great day. I know that it's pretty gloomy outside, but I'm excited to bring some cheerful news out of hopefully cheer you guys up. So first of all, our fall sports have been doing really great so far. They're all in their home stretch so far, moving on to postseason stuff like chess and districts. We have on the left, we have field hockey goalie Sana Smits, who celebrated her 400th goal saved. I know that last time she was celebrating her 300th. So it's been amazing to see how quickly she's progressed. We have our cross country runners in their recent invitational. We have 3 Great Valley runners that represented our school. So we have Kate DeMidio on the left, representing varsity girls. We have Braden Barber in the center for varsity boys, and Jake May on the right, who represented junior varsity boys. So it was good to get some representation from Great Valley as well. Our tennis team has also been doing a fantastic job. They broke a big record as Chessmont champions for the first time in almost 40 years, actually. The last time was 1986. So that was a big record. Very proud of the team. And the photo also shows our Chessmont doubles champions who were also champions for the second year in a row. So it's been nice to see some good records continue to be broken. And then on the top, we have soccer. They had a very close but great win against Unionville High School. And this was during their senior night, too. So that was a well deserved and great win. And moving on to homecoming, we had a great homecoming this year. As usual, we had our pep rally last Friday, actually. And the events were run by student council. We had a lot of fun events. The photo shows a photo of dodgeball from the pep rally. And then the senior class also sewed homecoming shirts to fundraise for the senior class as well. The football game was later that afternoon against Reston High School, and students were able to get face painting from National Art Honor Society, which fundraised there as well. And then the dance was last Saturday. It was a blast as usual. The theme this year was City Lights. It was a very fun theme. Our seniors were Philadelphia, juniors were Los Angeles, sophomores New York City, and then freshmen were Nashville. So it was great to see some very a lot of spirit from our students during homecoming. And also student council were able to raise almost $2,000 just from selling the shirts and selling snacks during the dance. So it was great that we were able to raise a lot of money for the senior class for things like prom in the future. And then today I wanted to highlight a class that has recently been added to our school. Anatomy and Physiology is in its 3rd year at Great Valley High School this year. And I talked to some students and some teachers. They all really love this class. So it's great that people really appreciate this new class that's been added. It's taught by Mr. Jolke and Miss Rurode, who teach honors, and then Miss Kincaid teaches standard. And this class is very special because it's very hands-on. People do a lot of like dissections and then hands-on labs in this class, which are really fun. I know that Miss Rural talked about a chicken wing lab that students did last month where they were able to learn basic dissection skills and then just like learn about like the muscles and the tendons of a chicken wing. And upcoming, I think next week actually, they have a heart dissection where they're able to like hold an actual human heart and then learn about all the blood and like all the muscles and organs that like run through the heart as well. So that'll be interesting to see. I'll pop in and see what they're doing in that class as well for that. They have a cat dissection at the end of the year, which is basically their big project. It features like everything they've learned throughout the year in this dissection, and students are able to also look at some interesting organisms. They look at pig lungs throughout the year. They look at sheep kidneys, and they're also able to examine some human skulls and human bones to learn about our facial structures. I know that this class has some pretty heavy memorization and like a lot of content thrown at you, but it prepares students for life and college skills as well. So it's a great class that helps you like prepare for college. I know that some past students who are in college now have shared that this class was really a great help in getting used to like college workload and then preparing for classes in college so that they're not overwhelmed with that. So overall, everyone I've talked to, I talked to Neva as well, our past student representative, and everyone really likes this class and they think it's a great way to learn more about anatomy throughout this class. And on the next slide, I have some photos from our actual students doing the labs. The left one shows our students from last week actually doing the chicken wing dissection. So this was, again, their introductory dissection. They learned some new techniques. And then the middle photo shows the torso model that students use throughout the year to learn about body systems. And the right one shows the cat dissection at the end of the year, which is always really fun. This was from last year, actually. And the student found out that their cat was pregnant, and then that was a baby cat that they were holding. So that was a great surprise. And overall, yeah, these dissections are very fun for students. And obviously, it's very fun to see like all of the different organs and then all of the different organisms that you're able to examine through this class. And next week, next Tuesday, actually, Justin will be highlighting the cybersecurity course. I know that one is also pretty new to our school, so he'll be talking about that and then computer science at our school as well. We have a lot of clubs at our school, so I think it's great to use our platforms to highlight some of the clubs. So we will be talking about some of the new clubs at our school as well. And then I know that we're in like an academic push right now, so PSATs and AP exam registration is coming, so Justin will be highlighting that next week as well. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Anna, thank you. And also just knowing that you're visiting the class for us and then reporting back to the board, really appreciate that extra step. So thank
Yeah.
you for your presentation and that extra effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to policy 3.01.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Related because I can't find my eyes right now, so you'll have to bear with me while you think they'll help?
You're just magnifying.
Oh yeah, that's really good. Thank you. Just call me Dr. Gafredo. All right, getting on with the actual business. So policy 8 was a revision of the organizational chart, which is just a simplified version of something which actually the original did look pretty convoluted. Roles were consolidated, and one thing of note is just that the older organizational chart had a solicitor as part of that, but this simplified chart just represents district administration. But no other changes in the structure. Policy 146.1, trauma-informed approaches. This was a proposal for a new policy based on a new PSBA offering. Some of the content for this potential new policy would overlap with the work that's already being done with the equity plan. But after discussion on this policy, it seemed a bit too in its preliminary stages to adopt as policy at this time. So a little bit more development and structure to that policy is going to be worked on, and then we'll revisit that as a potential new policy at a later date. Policy 236.1 on threat assessment, just minor revisions here with the language. Policy 254 on educational opportunity for military children. This was a new policy that is being put in based on state law that was recently passed. Policy 308.1. Employee resignations. This is also a new policy that was recommended, which just sort of teases out the amount of notice, the time frame that a staff member is required to give their resignations, and also clarifies that once that resignation has been approved by the superintendent, that it's unable to be revoked. Policy 317 on conduct and disciplinary procedures. These are just minor revisions based on PSBA updates. Policy 317.1 on educator misconduct. Again, just minor revisions on this policy. Policy 320, which was previously called freedom of speech in non-school settings. This is just a name change on this policy based on PSBA recommendations to employee freedom of speech. This policy really applies just to the employee's personal emails, accounts, and platforms, and not to district-sponsored ones. Those are covered in other policies. Policy 903 on public participation in board meetings. Again, this is a name change to reflect PSBA guidance. So this is now going to be public comment in board meetings. Policy 904, public attendance at school events. This is a revised policy to reflect, last year we had updated the tobacco guidelines in our 200 and 300 series policies. This one just sort of dovetails with that, and it's updated to include tobacco guidelines, service animals, and weapons at school events. Policy, I'm going to skip 217 for a quick second. Policy 105.3 on academic standards. Again, just new language based on the new standards, which was suggested by council and administration. Policy 105 on curriculum development. This is again, language that was added regarding some of the special observances and instruction that is required per new law. Things like Constitution Day and Citizenship Day, Arbor Day, Bill of Rights Week, holidays, which I learned a little something about myself during the discussion. Then we have policy 802, school organization, and this was updated to reflect the new 5-6 center. Policy 827, conflict of interest, revised to reflect the new federal requirements. Policy 336 and 343. These two policies we had actually discussed last year, but for some reason they never came forward for a vote. So this is just a carryover from the work that was done last year for approval now. So I'm going to go back now to policy 217. Policy 217 was an update on the graduation requirements to reflect the 0.5 personal finance credit that was added. This one still needs a little bit of discussion as to how to handle the graduation requirement, the total number of credits, whether we want to increase the total number, whether we want to take from one and, to make space for this extra 0.5 credit. So this one we're going to bring back again once that has been teased out with the high school administration. And then two other informational items for policies. We have policy 218 on student discipline, where work is currently being done with the consultant and administration. They're meeting in October and November, so we'll get an update on that sometime after December. So I would think probably in the new year, we'll get some updates on some of that work that's been done and how we can incorporate that into policy. And we still have on the docket slated the exciting conversation that is to be on overnight trips and our policies on that. So we're planning to revisit that from last year in our next policy meeting, which will happen on October 28th. Any questions?
Yeah, just on 217, you said that there's a change because there's now the state mandated half credit for the personal finance course, and that the high school administration is going to discuss how that would affect other graduation requirements. So am I understanding that they'll come back and make a recommendation that we're either just going to outright add a half credit to the whole pile, or we're going to take a half credit off of something else?
Correct.
And then they'll bring that to the committee, and the committee will make a recommendation to the board for discussion? Because this is for me, that's a big one, right?
Yes.
Changing what credits are required for high school graduation.
Right.
So when do you expect that will come back? Or
I think that discussion is happening currently, and so it should hopefully be soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Neha. Moving on to the superintendent's update.
Thank you very much. Not much for me today, but I will present next week. I have some exciting updates, some positive news sharing, some things on an after-school elementary activity bus, partnering with our foundation, some other pieces. So I'll have more information, but I'm going to reserve that for our meeting. And just to get that plug out there, next week's meeting is on a Tuesday because we are off on Monday for Diwali. So we will be meeting on Tuesday, October 21st. This evening, however, Dr. Wexler and Ms. George are going to work as a tandem, and they're going to give the first of 3 updates on our district equity plan. I think everyone on the board is aware we are in our 3rd year of a 3-year plan on equity. And the plan really consists of 6 main large action areas. And so tonight is just one presentation out of 3. The goal is not to unpack the full equity plan this evening, but to give you this high level look, and then we'll come back probably in January and then again in the spring. But those 6 high leverage action areas, one deals with developing and enacting a shared equity vision. We have other areas such as family and community engagement, instructional practices and systems of support. Another area is engaging in self-reflection and professional learning. The 5th area is classroom culture and school climate. And then our last action area within the plan is hiring and retention. And so we work in that context, and there were a lot of sub-goals underneath of those areas. And Dr. Wexler and Ms. George will give you, I think, a pretty good overview of where we stand. So
Thank you.
appreciate your work here this evening.
Sure. Thank you. And I think this may be the first time we've done an update in quite some time. So it may be a bit repetitive from things that you've heard from years 1 and 2, but it will highlight where I think the team has spent a lot of their time in trying to move the system forward. So the first area that Dr. Gafrida mentioned was developing and enacting a shared vision. Our building-based equity teams are up and running. That was a goal last year. They've been working with their principals in working with Dr. Holland Sims and myself to develop professional learning to share with their faculty. There was a big push from our review to make sure that the whole organization understood our equity policy, definition of terms in there, what belonging and dignity and inclusion mean, and examples of that in action, what that looks like in action. They're working with a text called Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity. We've also done work where all of our faculty have learned strategies to interrupt hate speech and harassment. So how to call in and call out, that's been shared with all staff. They've developed some repositories around that for their faculties to have as resources. There has been a tremendous commitment from the board and as a district to have principal and leadership coaching, and coaching for me as I'm trying to guide and lead the work with Dr. Holland Sims. And also Ms. Lynch plays a role in that because responsive approaches and how we intervene at the classroom level is also embedded in that leadership coaching. This year, a big focus for us, as Dr. Mehta mentioned, is looking at our discipline dashboards and our discipline policy. That was a goal that we established. We wanted to do that last year, but again, it's a really heavy lift. So I've committed to really focusing on that this year. September 24th, we had all principals and I'd say about 30 to 35 professional staff here at the district office for a full day where we learned about best practices in discipline. We talked about restorative practices. We looked at our data, so alternatives to exclusion. So we know that sometimes we need to use suspension and expulsion, but what are we teaching our children in terms of when they make mistakes, when repair has happened? So we learned together as a team, and what was really, I think, exciting for me to see was that the people in the room were really eager to bring it back to their faculties to have more discussion and learning with their staff, because if we talk about making some revisions to our policy, we want the whole system to understand the why and why we're trying to move in that direction. So that was a great day. We'll come back together in December and continue to provide feedback to our policy committee about what some revisions could look like in that area. Lastly, part of this vision piece was improving our leverage of social media. We had some feedback from the community. I think our CDI, which meets quarterly, that we weren't really doing enough to promote the work that we're doing. I know sometimes we just get focused on doing the work that we forget that we want to share it. So I know even in September and different trainings we've held, we've been more conscious about having some photography taken and just sharing that more publicly, creating some informational videos, and we'll continue to do that because I think it shares the message of the district's commitment to that. So again, that vision work, a lot of what we discussed was the professional learning, establishing the building-based teams, getting people kind of on board with the why, and all of the things that are all-encompassing around equity in an organization, because there's a lot of pieces to it, as Dr. Goffredo mentioned in the beginning. When we do professional learning with staff, one of the things that Dr. Hollins, Sims, and I'd like to do is collect feedback. So this is just a slide that kind of tells you, like, after we've had some of those sessions and then they go out and deliver it to their faculties, what's the feedback that they're receiving. So you can see those there. I mean, there's a lot of commentary about the staff being really open-minded. I've sat in on some of those even last year. I'll do that again on Friday. We have one at Katie Markley. I think our staff are generally feeling good about sharing the information and the learning with their faculties and collecting feedback. A lot of our staff like our book studies, so you'll see that that's happening in some schools as well. And some of the grows, like opportunities that they think we wish we could do more of, you can see there too. Professional learning time is always a challenge. So when we're doing some of this work for equity, we've been embedding it sometimes in faculty meetings, or when we have those like half-day sessions, we're capitalizing on those as well. People want to see what it means in action. So I think in the second update, we'd like to share more with you about at each school, like here are some of the things that you'll see happening that are kind of tangible, things that people can grab onto, and that concrete application piece. So those are just areas of growth. And what Dr. Holland Sims likes to ask, this is her quote, "If you could dream out loud, what would you want to see?" And, you know, it's themes that we hear often, like people feeling like, I wish there were more support for. They hear that sometimes for multilingual learners. Sometimes we hear it more for students with more behavioral and emotional health issues. That's been a struggle that we're trying to collect feedback from staff, like what would more support look like? And we continue to analyze that. We've made some improvements at 5-6, Ms. Dinsmore this past year. We added emotional support, more behavioral health support there at that building, and it's made a really big difference. There were some concerns about transportation barriers. You heard that mentioned earlier, working with Foundation to potentially have like an after-school busing option for students so they can access different clubs and such that happen either before or after school. A lot of, again, as I just said, concerns about mental health and behavioral support for students. I think we have support, but is it enough? And this year will also be a year that I'll be working with all of our principals and staff to just make sure we have a solid inventory of what all of our supports and interventions look like academically, behaviorally, and social and emotionally, because it's all three, right? Like they're the whole child. Opportunities for teacher and student voice. People love to be involved and part of the work. And then, of course, we've heard this, that a position that was just for this work would be helpful. But I think we've added, which I'll get to at the end, about adding our HR supervisor has been a great help and support for us to focus on some of these other systemic issues that isn't just HR. There's many other aspects to it. So that's just, I like to just share the feedback with our staff because in the absence of having a dedicated person, which we know we don't necessarily need to do right now, but it does require us to rely on our principals and our faculty to learn and grow as a community and then to share that with their faculties. That's kind of how we've been really rolling out the information and the professional learning to set the vision and help lay the foundation for the work that we're trying to accomplish. So family and community engagement was also an area of one of the 6 action areas. So one of our schools at the middle level, they did, and this was pulled right out of the equity review. They did host a multilingual learner family night in August. That was staff volunteered to bring that forward with the support of their principal. We have a counselor who is working on her internship to be an administrator. So Ms. Dietz, who is also bilingual at the middle school level, she volunteered to start a family mentorship program. So we recruited a few parents to begin that. We just haven't had any families sign up to be a part of it. But I will continue to follow up with her to see if we can expand that maybe out of that building. Maybe there's more to do at elementary or high school, but that was something that was in the equity review and something that we had set as a goal that we're still working on. In the equity review and in the plan, there was several recommendations about hiring translators to support some of the needs of our multilingual learners and families. And I think what we've learned, and credit to Dr. O'Toole, we have technology that we can also leverage instead of relying on people as much. So he's done a great job of working with Teresa Marsden. Parent Square has been a huge enhancement. And we've worked with all of the principals to understand our Come Alive feature, which is another way to get interpreter and translation services, but not necessarily relying on having to have like a whole cadre of interpreters available for conferences or other things. We're going to first try to work with some of the technology to enhance that. So there has been a lot of shifting here that's really to help communication overall, but in the spirit of that, it's making information accessible to all of our families who are speaking multiple languages. It's not perfect. We've gotten some feedback that it's not perfect, but it's an enhancement. I would say it's better than it was. So the next area, instructional practices and systems of support. I know Dr. Beck and Dr. O'Toole talk a bit about this in their curriculum and instructional tech subcommittee, but it's those consistent frameworks, particularly in math, so that our students know what to expect in a math class, no matter what level they're in. And I'm sure she would be happy to talk even more about that with you if you have more questions. It's not my area of expertise, but I can speak to it broadly. And also there's been a tremendous amount of work in focusing on small group instruction. So that's required some staffing shifts and some scheduling shifts for our students, but we believe that that's the best practice in helping them to learn and acquire the skills that they need. And we're creating individual learning profiles for students. That's all occurring through Dr. Beck's leadership with the ELD department, where there are individual learning profiles for students K through 6, and then we will expand into 7 through 12. So that's that framework component that's really focusing on the supports and needs of some of our students who we know have been somewhat vulnerable and needing more from us as a system. I think it was last year we talked, and this was in the plan as well, about our grant positions. This is going back in history, but I just want to share we're thankful for having some additions there. We added more supports at the high school through a mentorship program. So that's, again, those systems of support. It's like, and you see that pop up in the climate survey. Do students feel they can get what they need when they're in distress, whether it be academic, behavior, or social, emotionally? That enhances a student's perspective of how they experience our system. So it's important that we take a look at that as a district. Also, job embedded support using an inquiry model. These are all things that were embedded into the plan. We talked a bit about that tonight in the subcommittee. Our teachers really appreciate, I think, when we have external consultants that we are working with, but then they're coming in and they're observing classroom lessons, or they might model lessons, provide feedback to our teachers in real time. So it's better than just kind of going to a conference, getting information and coming back. It's more that job embedded support, whether it be through some of our external consultants or even through our internal coaches. And then lastly, I alluded to this very briefly earlier, but the review of our CST and MTSS support. So those are all the things that happen like before a child might be referred to special education. And we just want to take this year to really audit that. We have a new supervisor of student services. She and I are going out and meeting with all the teams just to hear from them about what's working well, what are areas of vulnerability and struggle for you in supporting students. And that will help us even with budget season when we think about, like, are we adequately staffed? Do we need anything different or any changes that we're trying to gather that information now? Engaging in self-reflection and professional learning. This is actually a photo of our September 24th training with one of our newly hired counselors. So I hope she's excited already to be in a picture. She just started this year. But so our administrative team has worked with Nicole Hollins just as a team. So we've received some professional learning from her on workplace wellness, which then, adds into that recruitment and retention effort. She's come out and presented and worked with us as an admin council. As an admin team, we've used the Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity text. So we even had some goal setting as administrators, dispositions for dignity. What are the things that we need to be working on to be like receptive to feedback, all the things that you need to be sort of equipped with to do equity work, because it can be challenging at times. And we just wanted to look at that internally as administrators and then use some of the work from the text for goal setting. Referenced earlier, but our principals and their building teams, they can work with Nicole Holland Sims at any time to set some strategies or goals for their school buildings. We had a staff member step up and provide some trauma-informed practices training at Sugartown, and that was very well received by staff. We've learned recently that we can get a module through what we call Vector, so we're making some shifts in our HR department to help streamline some of the online training that's a requirement, and we think we can add an enhancement here for trauma-informed. So we're looking at that, and we'll hopefully have that in place for next year. Because again, that challenge is time and relying on people to get all that information out to our staff. There's a lot of requirements, and then there's all the other things that we need to do just to help our folks be equipped to be in the classrooms and leading instruction and all the things. And then lastly, we did add the professional learning time to new teacher induction. So I go in for about 1 to 2 hours. I try and bring the new teachers up to speed on what I've just kind of talked with you about. Like, this is the work that our building-based teams have been doing. If you're interested, this is how you join. And then I'm also very conscious of sharing like our Title IX and our harassment policies so that they know as an employee, if you feel like you've been subject to harassment or something that is interfering with your ability to feel like you belong or having a good experience in the system, these are the policies that you can rely upon. And here's how you get in touch with people that can help you. So we're just more explicit about that with our new staff, and we'll continue to do that with all of our staff. Okay, we have 2 more. Classroom culture and school climate. So we administered the climate survey in spring for students, and I believe we'd like to do it again in December. And I know Dr. Fredo has spearheaded a lot of this, so I may turn it over to him for questions. Under this subtitle 2, we made a commitment to coding harassment. And so rather than just coding an incident as like inappropriate behavior, we're more explicit about what happened. And our building leaders do get in touch with either myself or Dr. O'Toole so that we're in the know about that. So as a system, we're really aware of how often it's occurring, what the consequences are, and how we're teaching students about the harm that was done and why that word might have been offensive or what they did was completely inappropriate, how it could be a violation of policy. So we were doing a lot more, not just like a suspend and code is inappropriate behavior. It's much more explicit, and there's more teaching involved, which has been helpful, right? Because we know that our students, one of the things we talked about on September 24th in discipline is that it takes a lifetime for people to learn not to act on their impulses, and we have kids that are making mistakes. Sometimes there's, intentionality, of course, behind it, but we want to look at it as much as possible as a learning experience for students, and then be able to build off of not only the consequence, but the teaching. So there's a lot of work that's been going on with that. I referenced the discipline policy practices. Again, with school climate and culture, like how our students experience discipline, the sense of fairness about what happens to students when they may have been targeted for harassment or such, like that all plays into how our students experience our system. And then, as we referenced earlier with policy meeting, our principals and faculties will engage in a professional learning both in October and November. Buildings will be doing it at different times, where they're going to be looking at discipline data, ways that bias shows up sometimes at the classroom level with how we intervene with kids and some training around that. And then ideas about best practices in student discipline through an equity lens. And I'm happy to continue to share more about that as there are questions. I'm just trying to there's just been a lot that's been done. I don't want to inundate, but we had a great day together in September, and I'm just looking forward to that moving outward to the faculties. And we'll collect feedback too to see what questions our staff have. There is a lot of misconceptions sometimes around using restorative practices, so we want to lay that out and gather feedback about even staff concerns. Like if we were to go in more of this direction, continue upon what we're doing, as staff, what concerns do you have about that? Like, will you, because some staff may feel as though, yes, the teaching is important, so is the consequence. So we have to find a way to make sure we're all, as much as possible, on the same page organizationally about the why behind the work and the learning and the pieces that go into changing a system in that area. So more to come on that, and we will provide more updates. The climate survey data, there is a lot to this, and for purpose of time, we didn't want to go into all of it. So we're just sharing with you some very high-level averages in the big clusters. And we can share with you that all of our data is around the state, it's above the state average. But at the secondary level, I know that the metric for what's considered like favorable would be slightly above that, I think at about a 3.4. So there are some areas where, although we're above the state average, we, according to what our students are sharing with us, there is some work to be done. And this is our first sort of dipstick into it. But I think if we do it annually, we can hope that we see trends and maybe some shifts depending on what we're actually doing in terms of the equity work. So I'll just pause there because I know there may be questions that maybe we can answer.
Can you talk a 3.9 out of 20?
Yeah,
What does this mean?
yeah. So do you want, I don't know, I'll turn it over to you and you can.
Yeah, I'm happy to. No, it's a good question. So all of the scores are on a 0 to 4 basis. So there are different thresholds. So the way PDE breaks it out, if you have a 3.5 or higher, really a 3.6, 3.5 is the cutoff, that's kind of viewed favorably. You're on the favorable side of student responses. Then you have this band in the middle, and believe it or not, all of our schools fell within this second band, which is the neutral band. We weren't quite favorable, but we weren't unfavorable, which is like at about a 2.5 and below is the cutoff for unfavorable. Now, I realize this is just one data point. This is a one-time administration that we gave last spring. We'll give it again in December, and now we'll start to have multiple data points that we can certainly thread. The student climate survey is really broken into 3 areas. The first is on student engagement and support. So we know that's aligned with our equity plan. We liked it. The second is social emotional learning. And I will say across our 3 schools, this is an area where we saw lower marks. So this is certainly going to be a focus for us moving forward, the social emotional set of questions. And then lastly, there were a set of questions around safety and respectful climate. And actually our scores were pretty consistent and a little on the higher end when it comes to safety. A lot of things relative to bullying and so on. So it's hard. I don't want to over extrapolate from one survey in one moment in time, but as we move forward, we'll have areas of target. And I really do think you'll see within our district goals this year, the social emotional learning component, helping students to regulate how they interact with one another. You just heard Dr. Wexler talk about building community responsive practices, also restoring relationships. So our students were very candid in their responses, and we do recognize this is an area that we're going to need to bolster. And hence, we've been working on a lot of these areas and we'll continue to. So the bands, hopefully you understand where we are. And let me see if there are other questions.
Can you give an example of a question under the social emotional learning, just so I understand what?
You know, one might ask students, it'll ask them about how well they regulate. They self-regulate. Like I'm able to control my emotions when I'm with people I disagree with. It might be a question like that. So they're outward questions. Some ask about how they feel about student interactions amongst themselves, and some are reflective questions where students are asked to process how they deal when they're with those that they disagree with or that they don't approve or that they feel others hear them. One other question might be, you know, I feel heard when I share my view. So it's kind of this tug and pull of both outward and inward type of reflections.
One thing that it's interesting, 'cause I think it aligns with what we hear from other administrators, that we feel as educators we're having to do more teaching of the social emotional learning skills than we've done in the past. And that's part of what I said about meeting with our CST teams and the counselors, getting feedback from them about how are you intervening, what types of groups are you running, are they targeted, do you need more curricular resources? So those are the questions that we are having. I think the data show that it aligns with some of what we already intuitively knew, but our students, it seems as though we're still trying to meet that challenge of teaching all the things, but also making sure those SEL skills are really embedded in learning.
Yep. And to your point, Dr. Wexler and I didn't frame this, but within board docs, there are some reference documents, and we actually put the blank surveys in there. I apologize for not indicating they are there, but certainly check those out, and you can review those questions. So
When we talk about, we said we were looking at a different climate study to administer. How will we standardize from the one that we administered this year to the new one so that we know that we're tracking progress
It'd be
accurate?
the same one, right? We look,
It-
use the same tool.
Right.
Yeah.
we are going to continue to use the PDE Student Climate Survey moving forward. Now, I remember in a prior meeting, we talked about the Youth Truth Survey. I remember Ms. Schwan in particular asked about Youth Truth. We last administered that right before the pandemic, but there is some pretty good alignment between this current survey and Youth Truth. Again, different tools, but similar. Youth Truth, for example, had lots of questions about engagement. Many of those questions were similar to what we see on the PDE. There were questions about academic rigor. Students were asked about the relationships, how they interacted. Specific questions about bullying existed in both surveys. There were questions about peer collaboration and culture in Youth Truth. You will see some of those manifest in the PDE climate survey. So we think there are some trends. They're different tools. We recognize that, but there really were similarities, and that's why we felt more comfortable going in with this newer tool moving forward. Does that speak to it? Thank you.
What are the plans to follow up on, so you said you're going to re-administer the survey in December? And
Yeah.
so my stance on surveys is always they raise more questions than they answer. So now we have all these questions about what's really happening with this data. What are your plans beyond December once you get those scores back to follow up on individual bands of questioning beyond another survey? So focus groups, student, I don't know, feedback, but something to better understand what these scores are telling us, because to your point, we don't know right now, right? And we might know a little bit more after a second data point, but it's still very fuzzy. So what are your plans to follow up with students to follow up on this information?
Yeah, we always want to look to triangulate the data. I mean, certainly the fact that we just have one data point, you're aware that we have student forums, right? We have a middle school forum, we have a high school forum. We use that as another avenue. We have parent key communicators who I meet with more than quarterly. So we almost have these built-in focus groups that we can often take questions back to and analyze. And then we don't run, in the past, we've run various groups. Years ago, we ran freshman focus groups. We picked 50 freshmen. One of the questions came up around transitions and what does that transition to high school look like? So we created focus groups with 50 ninth grade students, and a counselor and administrator sat in, we asked questions, we worked through it. So we have a lot of different tools, ways that once we get the information from the survey, it's okay, how else can we verify, validate, and triangulate some of the data? So those are some things that we've done in the past, and we're certainly open to doing them, as we move forward. Yep. Also, we have additional surveys, follow up, more in-depth things that we can do too. Those tools have really expanded in recent years.
So I think we got this data when the results came. It was it near summer? I'm trying to remember when they.
It was. We did administer it in April. We want to get more on like a mid-year cycle so that we can report out to you as a board and our community in the springtime. We don't like the idea that we gave a survey last year and we're talking about it now. We want to make sure we administer the survey and talk about the results in the same school year. And that's why we're going to move up the administration to December so that we can come back to you in the spring and share trends. And so much more to come. And I'm welcome to suggestions that you might have when it comes to acquiring additional information.
I think I was going to say one thing we can commit to this time of year, we do usually meet with principals about their goal setting for the fall. So this would be a good opportunity to some of our principals have done that, but I think to revisit the data and say, we know you got this in the summer. Let's take a look at it together. Is there anything you would want to do in your building to help elicit more feedback from students? Because I think those student groups naturally exist in some of the secondary schools, but they tend to be kind of hand selected. So I think Dr. O'Toole and I can brainstorm about that as we meet with principals in the next month or so, where we're gearing up for their evaluations and help supporting them in goals that tied to like our comprehensive plan, our equity plan that they're leading at the building level. Yeah. So anyway, so that's, I'm just, for year 3, I'm very thankful that we were able to actually get the climate assessment done. We spent a lot of time talking about which one to do. It is a metric that we have that we can continue to administer, at least give us some sense of whether we're making shifts or not. I mean, the discipline work, you know, looking at our supports for students, all the work that we're doing curricularly to make sure that we have consistent frameworks and the kids feel engaged. It kind of everything we're doing systemically feeds into it. So it is just kind of like at least it's a dipstick into how our students are perceiving the system. I'm sure it's not perfect, but I do like the idea of talking more with kids as much as possible. So, and then we only have a couple more slides. So I would just for purpose, I'd love for you to meet Miss George, who joined us in the summer in July. Thank you for that position. It has been a tremendous asset to our department. We've worked together, and Ritu has really spearheaded some significant changes in our department. And I would just like an opportunity for meet her and hear from her. And I'm going to turn it over to her.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Wetzler, for the opportunity to come and meet with the board and present some of the improvements we've made in our hiring and retention practices. So we started with, expanding our outreach for diverse candidate pools, by posting our positions in various job sites like Indeed. We have some interesting posts on LinkedIn, thanks to our communications department, about our vacancies, so that we are expanding our outreach to increase the visibility for our job posts. We're also posting it on Handshake so that all our new college students are seeing our posts, and also the DVCE sites and various other employment websites to expand our outreach. We also made improvements to our job postings to make sure that our job descriptions are very transparent about what exactly the expectations of the position is, and to communicate the responsibilities and the expectations of the positions, also including the compensation and the time, so that when people look at the posting, they understand what does this position entail? What are they looking for? What's the qualification that I need to apply for this position? And what are the hours like, and how much does it pay? And we are also including our equal opportunity language on all postings to reiterate that we are committed to the equal opportunity employment. When it comes to interviews, we have developed a structured interview process wherein the interview questions are consistent throughout each position, and the candidates get tailored interview questions for each role. And we do include questions on cultural competence and diversity awareness to ensure that that aspect of our priority is captured. And there is a section in the interview form that is dedicated to how the candidates handle diversity, inclusivity, and cultural sensitivity. We ensure that the interview panels include people from various different backgrounds so that we eliminate bias, and that there are different perspectives coming into making decisions about hires. We also have developed guidelines to interview panelists on best practices when it comes to interviewing, and guidelines on questions that can and cannot be asked, and how to eliminate bias and making decision-making, etc. We are keeping a priority to ensure that all the candidates are kept engaged, irrespective of whether they are selected for the position or not, because a candidate that is not a right fit for one position may be an ideal fit for another position. So we ensure that we communicate with them consistently about where they are in the process and where the next steps are. Another new initiative that we have is exit interviews. So we're going to begin doing exit interviews for all staff that are leaving the district to understand, what motivated them to leave and what the reasons are, and to get feedback and make improvements accordingly. Yeah. And then Dr. Wexler is going to talk about the investigation process.
And then just very briefly, again, I referenced this earlier, but just being very clear and transparent with staff and even families when there is a complaint, like what policies we're investigating under, making sure we're offering Title IX investigations. We do that routinely. So it's just continuing to coach particularly principals who are often at the ground level with those student and employee concerns. But the enhancements that have been made, Ritu has done a great job of streamlining some processes. We're also going to be coming to you later in the year about an enhancement to our system, which will make us even more efficient and less reliant on people to move some of this work forward. So she's got a great eye for that. I'm just really thankful. So thank you, because we had a lot of paper processes and there's just way too much compliance oriented things in our department, not only with hiring, of course, we want to hire the best people, but we also have to handle a lot of mandatory trainings, investigations, like it's multifaceted. So we're really looking to create just more effective processes. So thank you. I like to share our data. I will say, like many districts I've spoken to, we've seen more interest at the administrative level with diversifying our hiring. That is where we've been more successful. We're still struggling at the school-based level. So these are the data that show the ethnic and racial background of our staff. And of course, the priority is to have our diverse staff with our children. But we are still struggling. And one of the great assets that I think Ms. George brings here is that she led recruitment and retention for the whole county of Lancaster. So I'm just hopeful with more support that we will be able to do more engagement. We've not done great with the local partnerships with just not having the time and the capacity. So we'll focus more in on that this year. But that is the data as it exists right now. And then just lastly, the action area, and I'm happy to come back and answer questions on any slide, but just school-based action, like our staff, even community, what does it look like? What are you doing? So in the next presentation, we'll share really just from each school some highlights, but I just included a few here on the next two slides about things that are happening. Here's a great example, Sugartown Voices. This is a group of kids that we have that's already been formed that Dr. Forrest has been working with. So that would be a great follow-up for some of the discussion we had earlier related to the survey. Our CDI talked a lot about partnering with secondary and elementary. There's some examples of that, of our high school and middle school partnering on some initiatives, and our high school partnering with an elementary school. We have staff that are becoming more engaged on some of the proactive discipline approaches through a book study is another example. Let's see. At the 5-6 level, their monthly house meetings have been very focused on many things, but inclusion and belonging, empathy, and celebrating diversity. So they're embedding it into their house meeting structure. You can see some examples of Heritage Fest, having it during the school day rather than at night. The high school's on their third year of their cultural celebration. We've restructured some of our staffing and the EDRs at the high school level to really support this work. Students came forward, and there previously had been a Black student union, but then there wasn't, and they wanted to bring that back. And so we have advisors, and that's been re-established. I believe that was last year. And some of our admins have gone and met with those students to hear about their experiences, creating those spaces for kids to share their experiences in a safe place. So those are just some examples, and we'll continue to provide more of that in the January presentation. So I apologize, that is a lot to throw at you. It's just been a while since we've had the opportunity to really kind of go broadly with it. We have an accompanying document that is just keeping track of like where we are with each action step, which I think we could eventually maybe this year make public as well, so that we're very transparent about what we've accomplished and where we're still working. So thank you.
Any questions? We do know that was a lot. I mean, we're unpacking a 3-year plan in a half hour, but I think you did a great job. I appreciate all the hard work, both administratively and with our teams. Questions?
Yeah, actually I have two questions. But first I want to say, I acknowledge, I think we all know that this is not a simple task, that it's more of a
a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Like multi-layered paradigm shift and not just kind of initiative. So like, I think, we recognize how complicated it is. So my two questions are, one is really simple. The grant program at the high school, I know that there were some,
The mentor.
the mentor,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I know kind of in this time of kind of questionable grant funding, like where do we stand with that?
Oh, yeah. So good. That's a great question. Actually, those were the ESSER grant positions. We had quite a few. I think at the time we had maybe 10 or 12 for the whole district. So we had written into the plan that we would examine the need and bring it to the board. And we carefully selected to just keep 2 of the several that we had because we did not have support at the high school level. All that being said, in that way, those additional mentor, so it's already been, but it's budgeted for. So that's not reliant on grant. So they're there and they're,
And
I think, in their second year. Yeah.
And now that you remember, now you
Yeah.
mentioned, I remember that we talked about that. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
And
that's
then
okay.
my other question is more about, can you speak to any of the metrics that are being used to measure success of some of these initiatives that are already in
Mhm.
place? So we
Yeah.
have some better record keeping, some more, I mean, I know we don't have the responsive discipline like in place officially yet, but I
Right.
know where it seems like there's been a move towards that. And another things, the interventions from the teachers in terms of how to interrupt hate speech. So you mentioned like a bunch of different things that are actually happening now. And are there ways of measuring the success of those interventions?
Yeah, I think it's complicated. I know even with our discipline work, some of the education that we've done is that to set metrics based on like certain groups having less discipline is not usually advisable, although we want to see that, right? So that's like, depending on what area of equity we're focused on, like it might be student achievement and are there opportunity gaps between certain groups? So that could be something that we would study. We could look at our climate assessment annually to see if there are changes. Obviously, our hiring data, we would want to, so I think there are data points, but I don't know that they're super sensitive. So I think it's that combination of using some of those quantitative data that we collect, and then I think also maybe focus groups and just continuing to engage. Outside of that, one of the things that Andrea Dinsmore and I talk about too is just the percentage of special education, monitoring that very closely. So I go back to those systems of support. Like if we don't have a great support system, we do tend to see that we'll get more students being eligible for special education, and that can become a problem with our state data. And then we get so we're always monitoring that too. So it's so multifaceted, but I think, maybe the more that we can reference data change, that might be helpful in each, in those different areas. I don't know. Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
One on the work and one on the plan. One of the previous slide, the if you could dream slide,
Yeah.
many of those reflected the desire to be heard and valued voice.
Yeah.
Are we, so I see that that's included in some of the work that's being done to be able to create those spaces, but we do have avenues already built in, for those, for people to be heard and valued. Are we doing enough to make people aware of
Those
those
different
channels that are
spaces.
already existing?
Yeah, I think, I will say that this is from our staff too. So I think that's like this year we've always done this, but trying to be even more intentional about including our staff into input and decision-making. So I think with the AI piece, we have some curriculum councils that we'll be working on through teaching and learning. The discipline work, we're involving professional staff to get their voice and get their feedback and get their input. So, but from a community standpoint, if that's more your question, other than like the CDI and some of those other PTO groups, the one thing that we could do is assess the community. That's like another facet of climate assessment, right? But engaging outside of those vehicles, I'm not sure if we have any other or ways to promote it. Is that maybe what you're?
Or, just visibility of the avenues that are already there. Because
Yeah.
I think if you survey, I don't think you need to survey. I think this is a universal, societal need these
Mhm.
days, is just the desire to be heard and valued.
Yes.
So I think no matter what subset you you survey, you're going to get that same response in some way, shape, or form. So just being conscientious, especially since we're doing a little bit more work with communications and being proactive, like, are
Mhm.
we making those, are we highlighting the avenues that we already have in place for voices to be heard, not just staff, but
Yeah.
all around?
It's probably a good reminder about the Council for Diversity and Inclusion. It's been a fairly consistent group for the past couple of years. We expanded it, but just to highlight that and see if there is anyone else who's interested in joining, that is another great vehicle. I think the PKCs, I'm not sure how that's managed with like who sits on those and such, but we do have to remind ourselves that sometimes you have the same people sitting on some of those committees for a really long time. So I think
Yeah.
that's a good point. So I can talk with Teresa and Dr. Cafredo about that. It would be a good opportunity to survey again, or at least share again that these venues exist. Yeah.
Especially with our multilingual family,
Yeah.
getting them involved and giving them an opportunity for their voices to be heard too, since we're trying so hard to be able to support them.
Right.
And then my second question was just that as we're working with the consultants, this year, are we also simultaneously being mindful of putting people who are working with those consultants in a place to be able to carry on that work internally once those consultants go away?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Hollins always says my goal is to coach my way out of here. So she's been she's, has a lot of work that she does all across the state and the nation. So yes, I would say, I think for me, I have relied on her expertise because there is so much systemic shifting, and I think our principals have benefited from it as well. But I know we've had those conversations with Ms. Lynch too. And with the training the professional learning we've worked on with Dr. Holland Sims, it is more of a you receive, you digest, and then you share. So that seems to be working now with her sort of background support. But I would say we would hate to lose her, but we can always look to see if we don't need her quite as much. And she's just been a great asset. I think she can do a lot behind the scenes to keep us moving in the right direction. And sometimes just problem solve things that come up, ways to manage a situation, like things of that nature, just to tap into her skill set and expertise. So.
Yeah, and just, no, I appreciate the question. And part of the goal with particularly Dr. Holland Sims, and I remind the board, there was a time several years ago where she ran the Pennsylvania Department of Ed's Equity Hub for the entire state. And so the fact that we were able to contract with her and continue to work with her, but I think Joanna's work and with the team's work, investing in those building-based core equity teams, because they're the one at the grassroots level that's going to make this work happen. And going to Ms. Chasanoff's point, this is a systematic change. And it can't be just solely top down. And I think we've been good messengers saying, here's what we stand for, here's what we believe, here's our equity plan. But we need partners at the building level to really make this happen. Teachers, principals, everybody who engage. And so working with Dr. Holland Sims and investing in those core equity teams. Last year was, I think, the first year that we did that.
Right.
They all turned around their own building-based staff development throughout the year. And I think that was a really good launch. So I totally agree. We are setting that up where we want these teams to be self-sustaining with some additional support and help. And I just want to frame too, we forget this because it's been so many years, but if you recall, we took the 22-23 school year to partner with the University of Pennsylvania, and they did a deep dive across our district and met with every affinity group you could imagine. And that's what informed this report. And I think we have to go back to that because it's so far in the rearview mirror. But this report is solely based on the feedback that we got from the community 3 years ago. And so although things shift and change, I think that was really powerful because prior to that, we were kind of throwing darts at a board hoping we hit. And we said, no, let's take the time to do this right. Let's thoroughly investigate. Penn came in here and it took all year. And at the end of the year, we came up with a 3-year plan. So that's important too. And I think that's a testament that we have been listening to our community. But we need to keep doing it. We need to do more and more. But I do think it's important that we bring everyone with us on this journey. We're leaders, yes, but we can't do it alone. And you've been a great board. Everyone's really clear on where you stand. And I do think we've made great progress over these last 3 years. So thank you. And let me just see if there's any last questions.
More questions, not something I can answer tonight, but when I look at this stream slide, I kind of wonder if you ask people what they want, if they could dream out loud, then I think they deserve a response in a sense of where we are with it, right? So I would love to see things like, where are we with inclusive representation and curriculum and disrupting stereotypes? What are our mental health supports and behavioral health supports? So I feel like some of this may have been accomplished. Some of this is very attainable with current resources. Some of them may require a resource ask. But I think if you're going to ask people, then it's clearly something that's important. So then we have an obligation to kind of address it rather than just leave it out there. So it's not for tonight, but one of the things I would love to see in a future presentation or just some information moving forward is how are all of these lining up with activities we've already accomplished or are currently accomplishing or can accomplish in the future. Otherwise, this is literally just a dream slide, which
Yeah.
is what it is.
No, thank you. That's great feedback. Thank you. All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate both of your work and also the presentation this evening. Ms. Gallegos, back to you.
All right, moving on, 501, is talking about STEAM. Is there,
Yep. And we can approach all of those. If you have any questions about those units, I know Dr. O'Toole's here. They're just there and they'll be up for your approval next Tuesday.
all right. Facility 601.
Good evening. There is no facilities report, but the next meeting is scheduled for November 20th of this year. 6.02 is 41 Moores Road due diligence proposal. This is to be completed within 90 days, and it's scheduled to be completed within 30 to 40 days.
Once upon a time, we were bringing somebody in to look at all our space, to talk about, I think, athletic fields and things of that nature. Did that get reported out on what the recommendations are?
We actually just received the recommendations back 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
So we still have to push it through the facilities committee meeting. So that will happen at the November 20th meeting, and then we'll bring it back to the full
Great.
board.
thank you.
And if I could just ask a question, I know, and it's not necessarily relevant to this particular bid, but kind of just bids in general. What is our process for soliciting bids on projects like this? I know this is a big, $42,000 item. And I understand kind of the time sensitivity with regard to this particular issue, but I just want to make sure that, like, I understand the process that for soliciting bids. So we're not just going with the same
So-
vendor.
Yeah, there are thresholds that we do have to follow. They do change because federal thresholds are different than state thresholds. But in particular, we usually follow the 21.5 threshold. So anything above that. So normally, yes, this would be a bid, but because of time constraints, due diligence is not a required bid.
I have a question on this also. So it's an architectural firm doing the due diligence, and we have, if we approve it, and that we have used before. But I'm just thinking of, as an individual homeowner, when you do an inspection on your house, you have an inspector, but you also have specialists that come in for the different pieces. And it looks like the specialized parts are included there. Does Schrader have all of those capabilities in-house, or do they subcontract to firms who do things like the environmental piece and this and that?
So all of the environmental pieces, the studies, that will be done by T&M Associates. They are also the same group that prepared the field study report for us as well.
It just
Yes,
looks like
and the
one
5
document here, but they're separate. We're paying them separately, or is Schrader like a general contractor? for all
Schrader's
that?
like the general contractor.
Okay, got it.
Yep,
Thank you.
correct. Is it okay to move on to transportation?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Under transportation, 7.01 is the driver approvals for the Atlas drivers for the 25-26 school year. The Norcross First Student, First Alt, and Craft were already approved at the August and September board meetings.
Can I just ask, just very quick, because we get driver approvals every so often. Are they actually helping to alleviate our transportation, whatever issues may actually be? out there?
They actually, each contractor serves basically a different purpose. So Craft does the majority of our district. Norcross would probably be second. They're doing more of our athletics, activities, things like that. First Alt and Atlas, they're doing more of our specialized transportation services for special needs or special accommodations is what their drivers are
Yeah.
preparing.
I mean, to the point though, we're not in the dire straits we were a few years ago with driver shortages, but it is tightening up. It is getting a little harder. So we want to be candid, but again, not where we were doing lots of double bus runs. I think we all remember that. But we are noticing a little bit of constriction, perhaps with the driver availability. Am I correct?
That is correct. Over the last 2 weeks, we have had some constriction on the driver capabilities just because of illness. So if you get a couple drivers down, that does impact what a bus run looks like. So.
All right, moving on to food service.
Under food service, 8.01, this is the HOOD's proposal. This is an agreement for the cleaning of the kitchen exhaust systems. And under technology, 9.01 is a renewal for Swank Annual Services. This is a license to allow showings of videos and movies for family events, film, or foreign language clubs. Can I continue on?
Please.
Okay. Under financial approvals, 10.01 is also a renewal that is partnering with Academic Excellence. This is for 12 days of coaching, and the total will be reimbursed through our Title II funds, and this is literacy K through 12. And there will be multiple staff members receiving or participating in this coaching. Under 10.02, this is the engagement letter of Saxton and Stump. This is to retain a solicitor for our legal matter with the partnership with Whistler. This is for our third-party investigator for Title IX. 10.03 is attainment company subscription. This is a 3-year web-based subscription for Go Talk, and it will assist students who receive special speech services. 10.04 is Riverside Insight subscription. This is testing materials for school psychologists. This includes training and administering the tests through Riverside. This used to be paper and it's now electronic. 10.05 is our educational service agreements, and they are all attached for your review. 10.06 is a donation to the middle school and the high school. This is to Swelter Engineering Laboratories, Inc. for staff members who nominated the middle school and the high school to receive a $100 donation. This is to encourage students to develop a lifelong love of learning in math and science. 10.07 is the per pupil budget for the 26-27 school year. 10.08 is the Nemours Foundation Medical Service Agreement. This is for sideline medical coverage for our home varsity football games.
Westchester, Sherry. You're one, yeah.
Oh, did I skip? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. 10.08 is the Westchester University Affiliation Agreement. That is for our student teachers to be in our GVSD buildings for the 25-26, 26-27, and the 27-28 school year. And then 10.09 is the Nemours Foundation Medical Service Agreement. This is for the sideline medical coverage for all home varsity football games.
Sheree, can I ask you a question on that? I
Yeah.
know this is picky. Is that starting now, or has that been all season, or what's the deal?
So that is starting now.
We have one more home game.
We have
right?
one more home game,
Okay.
but with this will allow us to be able to utilize them moving forward as well.
Do other sports get that?
No other sport receives the sideline actual medical doctor, but they do sign off on all medical services throughout the school year for any sporting event. If there's an injury or anything like that, and the athletic trainer needs a medical doctor to sign off on any type of services that are provided.
Is that because of the violence of the sport, or like that they get that 500 more, or am I reading it wrong? I know this is very little.
Yeah,
Partially,
it
it's
is.
the nature of the contact of the sport.
Right.
One could argue that, others might also need to have that provided. But at the current moment, it is recommended for the football team.
Why are we making that switch now?
It's always been a practice that we've had a doctor on the sideline.
We're just using New Moore's moving forward. We used to have a different doctor.
Got it, got it, got it.
Ever since I've been here, we've always had a team doctor, only for football. It is the best practice. It's recommended. It is exclusive to that sport, probably as a cost containment piece. You have high impact in the injury, and also you have large roster sports, so that one does stand out. But you could certainly make an argument for other sports
Yeah.
as well. I understand the
And
point.
previous doctor retired. So that's why we had to get a new doctor. And we wanted to make sure that we were using a medical practice or multiple doctors, so that if one is not available, there's also another doctor who can fill in.
And then what do you mean by signing off on trainers who need service? Can you give
So
an example of
if
that?
a student becomes injured, they have ongoing physical therapy or different type of recovery that's needed. And our athletic trainers make sure that they're getting taped prior to an athletic event, checking on them before they're actually allowed to go back out on a field for practice or play. So that's what our athletic trainers are doing. And the doctor is providing those orders. So if a student has to be out for 3 weeks, it's the athletic trainer that's following those orders, and that doctor signing off on those orders.
But is that doctor seeing the student? So if my son gets hurt in a soccer game, not at a football game, and never interacts with Nemours, what is Nemours signing off on if they've never examined my student?
They're signing off on the athletic trainer to be able to provide this. Yeah,
Use your microphone.
Yeah.
But they're not being supervised.
the trainers have to have a medical professional sign off on any orders or type of.
Now that, yeah, so when we were subcontracted, they were being supervised by, they are required to be, their work has to be supervised by a physician. So now we've engaged in this agreement so that we have somebody supervising them, and they're part of our collective bargaining agreement now too. Does that make sense? So.
Yep.
Yep. All right, just to make sure, because I know the mic, we heard it here in the room. It might not have been broadcast, but Dr. Wexler shared that our trainers work under the supervision of this doctor. Just how our school nurses work with we have a school doctor that helps them. The same thing for athletic trainers. We have a separate doctor who they supervise and work under. All right. Thank you for the clarification and for the
And-
question. Does that satisfy your question, or?
No, I didn't have a question.
No, I was looking at
just-
Mr. Richards. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to make the argument that I think that it should also be for soccer. I mean,
And lacrosse.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're gonna.
And
keep it-
wrestling and cheerleading. Yeah, that's
So,
where we go.
like,
Yep.
Noted.
Maybe a conversation
I think it makes sense to, you're right, to look into it and see what other schools are doing, what are best practices in the medical field. I mean, not that we,
We really have, and it's only football. We've been spending months and months on this, probably since before the school year started. So that's why Sheree and I think and Dr. Wexler are pretty well versed and
Who's
able to answer your questions.
who's making the best practice? Who's that coming from?
Normally PIAA, and also just common practices across the Commonwealth and across our league.
I would be curious to know what like the Academy of Pediatrics or what an orthopedic specialist, you know what I mean? I appreciate PIAA, but I wonder when they're making sports decisions, what lens they are viewing that through.
I will
Put it
say,
diplomatically.
when we were out trying to find a replacement doctor, they were not easy to come by. Only because of, I would assume, a Friday night, or what does that look like on the weekend? So to find a doctor that was willing to be a part of the organization, to be on the sidelines. A lot of schools already have them on their sidelines, but this doctor is awesome, and he was willing to be able to provide the services for us. So.
I just wanted to ask on that. I imagine, I mean, maybe I'm just conjecturing here that we're paying them to be on the sidelines. It's not a lot of money for what doctors get paid, but at the same time, I'm sure they generate referrals from that. They're there and they see, so it's of interest to them to be there, because then if something does happen in the future, or even then that family is likely to come to that practice, right? So it's kind of like an intake thing for them as well. So I would imagine that if we needed to expand, potentially, that makes it more appealing to doctors.
And I would just say, I think, I get it. I understand that, the violence of the sport, et cetera. But, women are 4 times, young girls are more prone 4 times to get ACL injuries than guys. And so playing soccer or lacrosse. So I think,
Especially on turf.
and yeah, I think, and number two, I think just, and not to be cynical about this, but I was at a place where the doctor on the sideline was a dermatologist, right? Like, and he couldn't help at all. So you can put a doctor out there who's a doctor, but, I think you got to be careful about, and I know they're a very well, good reputation, et cetera, Nemours, but, I'm just saying to you.
Yeah.
This is an orthopedic pediatrician.
Yeah, we will stick with orthos. I want to make sure I'm processing. Is the board asking us to investigate what it would look like to have a doctor at every home athletic event at Great Valley? Because that's what I think I'm hearing, but I just want to know what our takeaway is here from this evening.
Before we go down that path, I would love some data on injuries. Like, can we have data on injuries that would require this type of doctor per sport for every sport? Like, can we just see what's happening and not like, we handled it? Like, no, we should have had a doctor there for this. So can we look at data before I want to know what's happening.
Our data or just general?
No, I want to know our data. I want to know our data more than anything.
We could give you fall sports, winter sports, basketball, wrestling hasn't begun. We haven't had spring sports. So I think any data that we would, I don't know if we could go back and look at last year's records. So we can certainly do our best to obtain data. I just want to say with only 1/3 of the sports seasons wrapping up, that may be a challenge. We can certainly look at what other recommendations are out there. I just want to get a sense of how much time you want us to investigate the team doctor issue, to what level. I'm just looking for that clarity and direction from the board. We can pull data, we can look at other recommendations, we can look at whatever you want us to. We're more than happy to do that. I'm just sitting at a point of uncertainty right now as far as what I would like us to do or bring back.
Well, I'm not wearing that hat today, and I'm not wearing my glasses either, unfortunately. But what I would like to understand is what is the specific purpose for this physician here? Because there are degrees of injuries, and we have athletic trainers which are capable of handling sprains or some of the minor things. We don't necessarily need a contracted physician for sports that lend themselves to those type of injuries. My impression is you're having the physician here because of the concussion protocol, CTE type, some of the more, the things that may require a little bit more immediate medical attention. And if that's the case, then I think it is worthwhile. I think it would be fine to not scare away this doctor and let them get their feet wet with football. But I think it is worthwhile. I mean, there's no reason. The data is out there that football is not the only one. And in fact, a very close tie to football are some of these other sports. So, so I think it will be worth our while to do that legwork. I don't think it necessarily needs to be done right this moment, but identifying exactly why we're hiring this person, and then identifying the other sports that require that level of medical attention.
Can I just add to, I don't know if this was stated, but our trainers will not practice without an active agreement with, did you say that? Like that was the impetus.
All right. I'm sorry, but you can use that one. Yeah, because you've been involved.
And they, due to their certification and licensure, they have to work there has to be somebody in the background supervising them. So that was the impetus for getting the agreement. And historically, they've had them at games, football games. But we did ask that. We even talked to others in the county. Not everybody universally has a doctor at the football game. So there is that. But really minimally, we need the agreement so that our trainers, because they were saying we actually can't be on the field and practice if we don't have an agreement with somebody in the background. So that's kind of and Nemours they reached out to us last year, and we met with them with the trainers. They've been looking for a partnership. So it kind of was a win-win.
I have no problem personally, I'll speak for myself, no problem with Nemours. They have a fabulous reputation.
Yeah.
I have no problem with having a physician, but to Tom's point, not a dermatologist, but somebody with actual expertise in sports injuries on the sideline. I think that is great. I think it's one of those situations where, again, I wonder if the people in charge making these recommendations are looking through the appropriate lens, knowing what we know about women's sports specifically, and also what we know now about the other sports in general, lacrosse, all of them lead have really questionable practices. And my kids play all of these things, so I'm part of the problem. But so I think going forward now is fine. And then to Andrea's point, what is the data? Are our student athletes, at what rate are they getting injured? And do we need somebody looking to say, you're out, you need to see somebody else. This could be ACL, or tape it up, rest. We'll see you tomorrow.
We can certainly engage our two athletic trainers and start to track that moving forward, and then revisit this maybe later in the year based on some of the feedback. So I think I got a little more clarity on kind of where we are. We'll do a little bit more investigating. And I think Ms. McGivney, Dr. Wexler, and I, we can maybe pick a date in the spring where we can come back and speak to this. All right? All right, appreciate it. Any additional questions on that? Ms. McGivney, I think we left off on
10-10.
10-10.
10-10.
Last item, at least under finance. 10-10 is the independent contractor agreement for Peterson Strategic Solutions. This is to provide negotiation services and business office contracted services during the 25-26 school year at a cost not to exceed $100 an hour or 250 hours. That's it.
All right. Okay, so that brings us to any board comments? Any public comment? 3 minutes. Come on up, your name, where you live roughly, doesn't need to be specific.
Hey, everybody. Nick Grock, 461 Conestoga in Malvern. You didn't think I'd attend a school board meeting and miss the chance to address the board, did you? I did want to come up and say thank you to Dave for his years and years of service to the community. I know he is stepping down this year. Please relay that to him. And I wanted to applaud the board and the school district for the recent property acquisition. You have opened up a world of opportunity with respect to our educational facilities. The district's facility strategy is clearly and must be in a perpetual state of planning to be ready for whatever the future may bring. And I'll say it again, construction and/or renovation is inevitable. We just need to be prepared for it. I also applaud the board for the communication that members of the community received immediately after the acquisition was announced. I appreciated that coming from you, Dr. Goffredo. And I also wanted to wish the board members seeking re-election good luck on November 4th. Who would have thought that volunteering to serve our community could draw such ire from certain members of the same? Lastly, in light of the meeting today, I wanted to say that I am excited to see that there is data-driven work and planning underway that aligns with the, albeit amateur research that I've been doing, specifically pertaining to the student experience at GVSD schools. I do appreciate that approach and the request for data regarding some of the conversations that have happened today, specifically the conversation about safety on the sidelines. And I think I share your cautious optimism as a result of the reports from the 3-year plan that was enacted. Thank you, Dr. Wexler, and thank you all.
All right, any other board comments?
I have one question that I don't really know too much about, but I'm hearing a lot about is the headache with some VPN, which I don't even know what VPN means, but there's like some glitch with the iPads and it's disturbing, like teachers are having an issue accessing sites or materials, students are having issues. Do we know, can somebody speak to that at all?
VPN, if I can recall, is a virtual private network. And I do know that we did roll out a new software called Zscaler to all of the staff and all of the students. And that does limit different websites that they are able to access. So there could have been sites that they were accessing previously that they can no longer access. I will talk to our technology supervisor to determine what makes a site accessible and what makes a site non-accessible, but that would make the change to the iPads.
And Zscaler is a protective software that we put on devices to help protect our infrastructure and our devices. So as that new program, there might be some blocks that we're working through with that new program.
Yeah.
I'll
That
just say, I had that at
may be-
work. I had that at work for years. It's
Yeah.
very common. And it was, Zscaler was the brand that we had, yeah.
And was that the issue underlying problem that the kids had with the SATs this past week?
Actually, Ms. McGinnity, because you work closely with Ms. Evans on that, I think we fought, well, with Dr. Kemp, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah.
That is a
Yeah.
separate
It's a separate
issue.
That was an issue that was actually at our neighboring district, Tredyffrin Easttown. And our director or our supervisor of technology did reach out to their technology director, and they had firewalls up that prevented our iPads to be able to access. They have since rectified the situation, and she also reached out to all of the other districts in the county to make sure that our iPads were able to be used within their firewalls as well. So everyone has been alerted.
So it wasn't a Great Valley issue, it was
No.
a TE issue? Okay.
Correct.
But
Were
in our-
kids prevented from taking the SAT because of that?
They actually had loaner.
Mhm.
Oh, they had loaner. Okay, all right, because that
yes,
would be
that
terrible
the
to be ready and not be able to.
Correct.
Is it my understanding too that the SAT board also recommends private devices for this reason and that communication had been out too?
You can bring your own device. I know a
Okay.
lot of students do use their provided
Sure.
technology to be able to take the SATs, because you do have to have a certain piece of software on that device. And they do recommend that you download it prior to,
Which is probably why
but
the
our
personal
systems
device is
already,
better.
yeah, our systems already have it on there.
Okay. All right. Agendas are up for next week. We meet on Tuesday as a reminder. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for your time and attention. And we'll see you next week.